somebody alerted me yesterday, and I think he's in the chat right now. Let me look if I can find him real quick. Philly Don, are you out there? I thought I saw you in here this morning. Philly Don, are you in here? I don't see you now, but I thought I saw you earlier. But, we do this show every day, John, and I don't remind everybody what time we're on. And we have a lot of new people rolling in. And some guy was like, how come I don't know when you're on. When are you on? We are live here on Birds 365 every single weekday from 8 to 10 a.m. That is 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern time, that
The
is. So
morning
if you're
show.
new to the show, or you're just watching your first episode, or you're just catching this segment, we're 8 to 10 every single day, and the National Football Show is 2 to 6 p.m. Eastern every single day. So that's where you can find us, and I join Dan Cilio every day at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then all of the other videos and premieres and content you see on the channel are clips and segments and highlights from those shows. So big thanks to you, Philly Don, for reminding me to let everybody know when we're here every day. And there's my man, Philly Don. Philly Don, appreciate you, brother. Thank you, man. John, let's talk about Bryce Huff. Tom Pelissero yesterday kind of subtly mentioned Bryce as a guy that could be on the move here at the trade deadline. Now, I'm looking at some of the contract breakdown, and I'm like, I don't see it. What did you make of the Tom Pelissero report?
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, the dead money, I don't think is that big of a problem because
it is over 30 mil, right?
34 million, I think. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie's proven that he's willing to do that if need be. The cap hits 29.65. That's the bigger deal. And, trade, it's very doable though. So that's more of a release, and I think people don't understand that. So there's a lot of ways you can go about it, which is restructure, pay some of the money down. So the point I'm trying to make is you never say never. And obviously Tom is very plugged into the NFL. So I think something's going on. And I think, Howie's come to the point that Bick's not going to play this kid to the point where Bick doesn't like this particular player. There's the hand injury, which, was real. He had something on his hands. But it was weird in the fact that it happened pregame and then he wasn't playing and then he was playing late in the game. So if you're hurt, you're not playing. And then why are you coming in late in the game? That didn't make sense. Bryce, a couple of us tried to talk to Bryce after the game. He did not want to talk. So, I mean, something's going on. And the fact that Tom mentioned it is, I always joke, and I joked this morning on Twitter, get out there and read as many bullshit rumors as you can. With Tom, it's not bullshit. So,
yeah, that's what I mean. He's like right in there with the NFL,
Yeah.
So,
so there's something going on, and I always say with organizations, if you make a mistake, it's better to admit it early and take your medicine,
right.
if you can. And there's no guarantee like anybody wants Bryce Huff. And if he is hurt, that complicates it even more. Who wants a trade for an unproductive edge rusher who's hurt? That would factor into it as well. But it's not working here. And I, it might not get done today, but I think it's pretty clear that they're going to bite the bullet after the season in some way. Because Bick's not going anywhere. I mean, I don't care if Nick gets fired. Bick's not going anywhere. I think they will, whomever they hire in that kind of situation, Vic Fangio is going to be like Jeff
I don't
Stout.
think Nick's getting fired.
I don't
either.
think he's getting fired
Yeah.
either. I'm just saying, um, in that type of situation, worst case scenario, if they have another collapse like they had last year, which I don't think they're going to have, but in that type of scenario, I think they're going to force, not force, but because there's plenty of coaches that would love to have Vic Fangio as a defensive coordinator. I don't
He's
think
done a
Vic's,
really nice job this year. Vic Fangio deserves a lot of
yeah,
credit, I think.
I
Yeah.
don't think Vic's going anywhere. Um, and I don't think he likes the player, not personally, you know.
Yeah, no, the football player, yeah, I
Yes.
guess.
Um, and I think the Eagles have come to grips with that.
That's a big miss there, but you're not going to be 100%. So I'm not going to, I don't, I'm not going to kill Howie. I get it. Sometimes it sucks to pay a player, but you don't shoot 100% from the field. And you can look at a couple of other things that Howie did this offseason that are, as of right now, are panning out very well with the 2 draft picks and Zach Bond, obviously, and Kobe Dean's finally showing some signs. So still some good things on that defense, but Bryce Huff might be on the move. Another trade just came down in the NFL. Everybody,
Yeah,
breaking news.
Khalil
The
Hayden.
Bears sending Khalil Herbert, the running back, to the Bengals. Bengals were in desperate need of a running back after moving on from Joe Mixon. So they get Khalil Herbert from the Bears. I didn't see any compensation yet on that. And then the other move that we mentioned briefly, but I do want to bring it up here in the trade deadline is
2025 7th round pick for Khalil Herbert.
for
Looks
Herbert.
good,
That's what it
man.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Darius Smith move hurts a little bit, John. I'm not going to lie to you. That's a guy that I thought would potentially, be a good fit. But John, also, and tell me if I'm off base on this. Part of me is ready to stop with the bringing in the old guy on the other side of his prime and hoping you can
Oh,
get
that's
something
fair.
out of him
That's
late.
fair.
And that's why I was like, I understood what you were saying. Where Myles Garrett and Max Crosby are most likely not a realistic probability to be moved, or for Howard to even send that type of compensation to get those guys. But at least that thought process of a game changer would make sense to me a lot more than hoping you can get another rotational piece that's 30 plus and bringing them in. But I did kind of like Zadarius Smith, and they sent a 2026 7th to Detroit with Zadarius Smith and they got back a 2025 5th and a 2026 6th. So basically a 5th and then a pick swap there on the 6th and the 7th, which is interesting. What did you think of the Zadarius Smith move?
Well, I love it from Detroit's perspective,
Yeah, me
but
too.
you have to realize what it is. It's, it's a baseball like, you know, you're picking up a guy for half a year in a playoff run. That's it. No other expectation. Um, and when you're in the position they're in, that's when you swing for the fences. That's when you try to do it. That's
Right.
in theory, that's what the Eagles would want to do as well. Um, knowing he's not going to be long term. Now, when Vic was asked about the trade deadline last week, he said the same thing you said. I'd rather have somebody who's going to be here for uh, a number of years.
Yeah, building block type of piece.
Yeah. Now, in the case of Miles and Max, I mean, yeah, that's unrealistic. So you're more talking about younger players who maybe have been undervalued, or you think have been undervalued by their teams. That's why I brought up Josh Uche all the time before he got dealt.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
he went to Kansas City, I believe, right?
yeah, he went to
That was
Kansas
interesting,
City.
John. The day you brought him up, that was the day he was traded. I thought that was pretty cool. I'm like, if you listen to Birds, you're ready,
Yeah.
everybody.
Baron Browning is a guy who a lot of people brought up because he was with Vic in Denver. He got traded to Arizona, I believe. Um, now that's always interesting because that's how people do a lot of these rumors. Oh, Baron Browning was with Vic in Denver. And he was, but I always found that, sometimes it's like, I say this all the time during draft season. Oh, he's in for a top 30 visit. Sometimes those things don't go well. Like people
Right.
assume it's always positive. Like, and I don't know Vic's relationship with Baron Browning, but I know he wasn't an edge rusher. He was an inside linebacker when Vic was there. So maybe he doesn't think he can be an edge rusher. So I think too many people, do that, connect the dots, and um, it might not be the bit you think it is, but he's in Arizona anyway. But um, yeah, I mean, to me, that's the position they need. I don't think they have a need really anywhere else. I mean, if something falls in your lap, obviously you want to take it. Always want to try to improve. But I seriously don't think they have an obvious need where they have to address it.
I kind of agree. That's why I mean, I said on the show last week. I don't think it was this show. I think I said on the afternoon show. I don't know if I think I don't know. I'm not anticipating a move today, honestly, from Howie. I
Well, I
don't know.
never say that because he likes doing stuff.
Right. I know he
Sometimes he
likes
does
doing
stuff
stuff,
to
but
do stuff, to be
in
honest.
line with what you just said, I don't really see a massive need. Like, would an edge rusher be great? Yeah, of course, it'd be great. I mean, you can always add more pressure to the quarterback, but I
Well, I
don't
think
see it.
edge rushers a legit need if you're not going to play Bryce Huff. Like,
Oh, it is definitely. But like, don't you think they're going to play him more? Like, I know Bryce
yeah,
has a
yeah.
little
I
bit up
think they're
there,
going to
but I
go
mean,
back
shit,
to what it
he's
was.
not that bad. He can't be this bad.
No, I think honestly, I think he's been mediocre. I don't think he's been terrible. I think he's a mediocre. He's been mediocre here, and he's not used correctly. Um, which is, I think, the problem. And he'll go back to playing his 22 reps, and everybody will say, "Oh, Nolan Smith's in, and Bryce Huff isn't in," and that'll continue. But um, and hopefully he seems to like Nolan better. Hopefully Nolan keeps getting better. And he can start playing more snaps. So, because one thing I am concerned, even though there's no evidence of it, Brandon Graham, um, this was because they had been blowing out people, and Jacksonville got back in the game, so they weren't able to bench. They weren't able to play their bench guys. Um, So the snap counts gave you a better indication of what's going on. And Brandon played 37 snaps, 69% of the defensive snaps. They only played 54, but he was out there a lot. And is that sustainable? I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
think it is.
on the same breath that I say, I don't know if we need anybody. Daz points me to an interesting thing. We literally have a 36-year-old taking 70% of the snaps right now. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe
Well,
they do need
he's
something.
not that's high for him. He's not typically
Yeah,
there, but
that's really high.
yeah. And
Anybody out there down
part
the
of
East
that was
Coast?
Huff was hurt, and
Right.
Huff only played 6. So Huff's usually
Are you
Nolan
buying the
played.
Huff was hurt story?
Yeah, he had a big wrap on his hands. They went out of their way if he's not hurt. Um, and he typically Smith Nolan played 22. They typically play right at the same. So if he played 22, you're taking 16 probably off Brandon, and you're back to normal
Right.
level. So they're going to have to play him if he's here. Um, and I would, I don't criticize Vic for much, but I will I think he needs to utilize him better if he's here. I've said that pretty consistently. Um, and I haven't seen that. Not a lot to criticize Vic for. He's skating by. It's coordinator day.
Yeah, he's done a
Um,
good job. Although I will say, I thought Doug Peterson adjusted pretty well in that second half and kind of finally made some moves.
yeah, they did. But
Yeah.
I mean, it is the NFL. I mean,
Right.
anytime you're in the NFL giving up whatever they give, what was it, 215 yards? I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, that's what I said yesterday. I'm
it's
like, that's
like,
a pretty good day.
I mean, what do you want? And by the way, that's skewed. And you know me, I hate to blame the officials, but the Barkley play skewed everything. Like everybody's thought process of that game, it skewed everything. Like if they make the right call there, none of these discussions are even happening.
Yeah, but to your point, and you say this many times, you almost have to factor in that some of that stuff is
Yeah,
going to
Nick
happen.
talked about it yesterday.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
and that's kind of why I took some of the takes I did on the decision making with Nick, where I'm just like, you can't factor in that it's going to all play out like you want it to.
well,
You
and by
know,
the way, I should have brought that up, and hopefully we could put a bow on it. So I do want to, Nick was obviously asked,
Yeah.
and he doubled down. And he said, and I'll quote him here. I think every time we've had a 2-point opportunity from the one, we've taken advantage of that and gone for it. And he could have taken out Think every time they do it. That doesn't mean we've always gotten it, but we've gone for it. So you trust your process in that scenario. You trust all the work that you've done to help you make that decision. You trust your players, which I think is important in that scenario. I'm not going to get into the things that Jacksonville did to stop that. They did a very good job. Credit to them to stop a play that's been very successful. And then the key point, you can't overreact to a play that's had as much success as that's had the last 3 years. So we have a ton of confidence in it. That's sort of where the organization is at. And if they don't show confidence in it, which they didn't, and if I were next, I would have followed up on that. Um, but it's tough to do on Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. The Monday pressers are on Zoom.
Yeah. So, if their confidence wavers with that play, or they start having consistent failures with that play, and even that, I go back to the officials. If they got one, which I think they got, I think it's a different conversation.
John, anybody stick out to you that you thought, I know you mentioned Josh Uche before he went, but anybody right now on your mind that you're looking for that could be a potential candidate for the Eagles to go for today?
Well, boy, a bunch of them are already gone. Uche,
Yeah.
Zadarius Smith, I think would have been a
Michael
perfect
Michael
fit.
G here brings up some good ones. I mean, he gives you Azeez Ojulari.
Yeah, they're
I
not
just
going
don't
to
see
trade him to the Eagles.
I don't see
Yeah, they're going to be
individual.
rich. Chase Young, I run in the other direction. Calais Campbell, tremendous player. Still, I think he's 36,
Yeah, he's
37.
old, man.
Yeah, I don't think he's a fit for what the Eagles need.
He's 38, John.
38. He's a phenomenal player. He should be a Hall of Famer. I believe.
38 is insane. I mean, you talk about 30 being a bad word in the NFL. He's closer to 40.
Yeah, there's certain guys. I was watching. Yeah, the NFL's got to revisit that, because guys like Calais Campbell reminds you. I was watching. I said Joe Flacco, the other day, and the two best defensive backs on the field were Gilmore and Smith, Stephon Gilmore and Harrison Smith, and one of them's 34 and one of them's 35. Most of the time they're right, but they pull the plug on too many players, I think, a little bit early. And Calais is a tremendous player. I don't think he's a fit for what they need, though. More of an interior player at this stage, not an edge rusher.
Yeah, I want to get to a couple super chats here that we're talking about the trade deadline. I know we had a bunch of. I'm sorry for the people I missed their super chats on the Nick Sirianni discussion. I'll go to them, and we'll talk about them before we get to the break. Thanks, Brian Garner. I see yours, Brian Pumper and Nosti Beats, and Dirty Air. See you all. Thank you guys. Philly Don checks in, and he said we kind of just hit on this, but I do want to give him credit for dropping a super chat. Thank you for the support, my man. Appreciate you. He says, if there's a move out there to be made, who would you consider making a move on, John, and which side of it are you making it for? We kind of just talked about the players.
Yeah, I would have, if I were the Eagles, I would have went for Zadarius Smith. I would have went for it.
And they didn't give up too much to get him.
Knowing it's short term, it's I get the Robert Quinn stuff. But he's shown he's still got something left. That would have been my move, or my original move would have been Josh Uche, but he's off the board. So, I don't think, and I'm not Howie. I'm much more conservative than Howie. I don't think they have a tremendous need anywhere else. So all I'm looking at is edge rusher. Like now that Sydney's back, I don't think they have a need at safety.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't either.
I think they're very deep at cornerback, deeper than they've been in years with Rodgers and Ringo.
Definitely don't need a cornerback, at least not from my perspective. You don't.
The linebackers, first of all, they've been freaking great. They were the top 2 linebackers in the league again from PFF, 2 games in a row. That's amazing. Um, Now Ben had a concussion, but he'll be back. I imagine he's not gonna get through it this week. But I like Trotter. Warren Burks is solid as a veteran guy. Um, Defensive, tackle, I think they have some, young guys who can play a little bit in the Jomo, Booker. Um, and as Vic said, man, this is not a plug and play league. So, you know, you're not gonna just step in and play. You said a couple positions a little bit easier, and he mentioned corner, which they don't need. But, you saw it with Cam Robinson. He's out there playing well at left tackle because all you do is go and block, go pass
Right.
protect. Um, so there's certain positions where it's a little bit easier. Um, but in general, it's not a plug and play league. And then offensively, I mean, they don't need anything. A lot of people want another running back, but I mean,
I don't know if that makes sense.
no. What do you want? I'm
Well, just I
obviously
guess just because Saquon's on pace for so many damn carries, and honestly, Jalen Hurts is on pace for like 190 carries too.
half of them tush pushes. So remember that. Shane will
Definitely a
yell at
good bit
you.
of them push pushes.
Shane will yell at you. Um, so a lot of them victory formation too. You got to add
Shane will
that
drop
in.
a couple F bombs at
Yeah.
me.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think Kenny Gainwell's a fine backup, and I think Will Shipley's um, again a good young player that if you had to throw him in there, I think you'd be surprised. But um, you know,
Should
the
they be using Gainwell more?
yeah, I mean, I think they're having Saquon touch it too much. I don't know if it's sustainable. You saw he was dealing with something in the game.
I think it came from the big hit on the big hurdle play. I mean,
Yeah,
if
that's
you
why
watch
it's
that,
hurdle, guys. That's why, yeah,
he
enjoy
got
the highlight.
creamed on that play, man. When he landed, he
Yeah,
got hit hard.
that's why they teach you not to jump in the open field.
I know.
Certain guys can do it and get away with it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I mean, it's a lot of touches, and the Eagles claim they're going to manage him during the week when it comes to load management. Not going to be in the game if they need him to win the game. They're going to use him to win the game. So, but I do think there's this mentality of, you know, look, if you lose Saquon Barkley, you're screwed. You're not replacing him. You got to play a different way. You got to persevere. They have good backups. Um, but you have to play a different way. Just like when they lose AJ, you have to play a different way. You can't replace players like that.
No doubt about it. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. We'll get to a break. Well, real quick, what do you think of the fit for Zadarius in Detroit? That's
Oh,
a
it's a
nice,
great fit.
yeah,
Well, I mean, they lost Hutchinson, so it's
right.
amazing they haven't missed a beat because that guy was going to be the defensive player of the year if he kept it going. And you thought, oh, that's a big injury. Maybe they'll come back to the pack. Nope, not at all.
No, they
Um,
look really good, man.
so he's not obviously Aiden Hutchinson, but he's still a good pass rusher and makes the best team in football a little bit better. That's what you're trying to do. So
Right.
I like the move for them.
They're doing
I
a
would have
really good
liked the
job
move
there,
for the
man.
Eagles.
He might win GM of the year this year, Holmes.
Yeah, well, I forget who won it last year, but he should have been in it last year.
It
I mean,
wasn't Howie last year, was it?
no, no. Um, I'll look it up, but that's um, I think it might have been Holmes, but are we going to break? I'll look at the break.
Yeah, I'll go to a break. We'll get to our commercial break. Before I do that, though, I'm going to read these super chats, John, before we get
All
to the
right.
break, because I want to bury the Nick Sirianni topic, but I do want to read these super chats from our great viewers and the supporters of JAKIB. Thank you, guys. Brian Garner checks in. Brian Garner says, I don't change my mind based on the results. I'm old enough to have made bad decisions that worked out. Doesn't mean I would do them again because they worked. I'm not
Yeah,
that
it
old.
was, by the way, Brad Holmes, by the way.
Oh, was it that one? Yeah, I kind of thought it was once I said that. I'm like, oh, maybe it was Brad. So he probably won't win it back to back. They don't like to do that, but we'll see. Brian, appreciate the Superman. I hear you. I'm not very old, but I do agree
Well,
with that.
I get, and maybe he's telling the truth, but I never hear people complain about successful plays. I get a lot of complaints about unsuccessful plays. I get a lot of complaints about play calling, and nobody
Oh, I
knows the
really
play
tried to
call.
keep it just about the decision.
Well, that's yeah, but
Yeah,
I'm answering his question. I get a lot of complaints about play calling, and no offense, Brian, but I know you don't know what the play call is. And I know that because I don't know what the play call is.
right.
And I talk to these guys all the time, and I talk to the coaches all the time. And I'm not even criticizing Jalen Hurts for because EJ Jenkins is open because I don't know the progression. And I'm pretty sure EJ Jenkins ain't in the progression. That's why I'm not criticizing him for it. Um,
I can agree with you on that one for sure.
so when you complain about play calling, and if you don't, I apologize. But when you complain about play calling, it's the same thing. You're talking about results. You're not talking about decisions. So not a lot of fans who don't base their criticisms on results. I'll just say that.
Brian checks in again. He says, also, the same people who are calling for Nick's job are calling for Doug's job at the end of 2016. Yeah, I'm not ready to call for Nick's job. Honestly, I don't think Nick's going anywhere. We're 6-2 again.
Well, certainly not now. I mean,
Well, no, I mean, we're 6. I mean, what are we going to end up, John? Seriously, right? I mean, I projected 13 wins and everyone called me crazy at the time, and I'm not saying they're going to get the 13 wins, but they already have 6 and they got some I mean, they got to play Dallas twice. They might not even have Dak Prescott for those 2 games. You're talking about 2 games potentially versus Cooper Rush. I mean, this team is
well,
going to
yeah,
give you
but
marching order 10
remember,
wins pretty easily.
they were 10-1 last year, and I didn't think there's any way they would have had that collapse.
That's
Um,
true.
And look, I tell the story all the time. I was flying down to Tampa, and I was laughing at people for saying Nick Sirianni's going to get fired. And I was flying back from Tampa, and I said, maybe Nick Sirianni's going to
Yeah,
get fired.
that was ugly.
So things can go wrong, but right now, right now, in this moment, in this snapshot, which I know people have difficulty with that as well, there's no way he's getting fired in this snapshot.
I guess you bring up a good point, though. They did lose to Tyrod Taylor in the year last year. They lost to Drew Lock. I guess I shouldn't put the cart before the horse. Let's win the games first. Cooper Rush maybe can get the best of us. Brian Pumper says, Nick Sirianni is a god. J-Mac drinks from the fountain of Sirianni.
Criticize him all the time. You hear what you want to hear. You just, I criticize the guy all the time.
Here we go, John. You'll like this one. Nosti Beats checks in. Appreciate you, Nosti. Appreciate you, Brian, and 2 Brians, Brian Pumper and Brian Garner. Appreciate you both. Nosti says, can we just agree the Eagles will likely never have this many failed 4th down 2-point conversions in a single game again? This was an outlier game.
Certainly, yes. Certainly from the one, yes. I mean, yes, it's a complete outlier. So from that standpoint, yes, you're 100% correct.
It's a good point
It's not even that big of a deal.
Yeah,
which is
a good point.
Part of my concussion protocol. Yeah, it's not a big deal.
John, you're gonna be in the concussion protocol till like January.
I know.
Dealing with me. Dirty Air says, get used to it. It's evident they are going to line up for 2 every time to try and draw off sides so they can push. If not, they'll kick it. It does seem like that's what they're doing.
Now what do you mean? They kick extra points all the time. What?
No, but they have been doing recently where they roll it out and they get.
Oh yeah, sometimes they've done it, but they still the majority of the time when they kick the extra point, they kick the extra point. And on the Jake kicked the extra point through on one, and they jumped off sides trying to block it, and they got the extra yard.
Yeah.
Now,
We
if you're
didn't have
talking
any
about
extra points the last game, right? I know
now,
they attempted that one, but we didn't have any, right?
no, if if you're talking about, yes, they're going to line up a lot on 4th and 2 or 4th and 3 and try to draw people offside and then make a decision, um, which is typically going to be aggressive, but yeah, they do that a lot.
Good stuff there. Thanks everybody for the super chats. Great conversation on Bryce Huff, who was mentioned yesterday in a Tom Pelissero segment. Who, as John mentioned, there's a lot of bullshit out there. Like John, the new Bleacher Report is evidently some betting outlet. Now I keep seeing, there's these things coming up about, oh, this guy's going to be sent here per whatever the betting outlet is, and I'm like, what?
Unfortunately, my outlet does that based on Bleacher Report.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, yeah, it's horrible.
But those are the bullshit. Tom Pelissero is not bullshit. He's plugged in with the NFL. He works for the NFL. So he mentioned Bryce Huff yesterday. Could Bryce Huff be on the move today? I would say it's unlikely, but I guess you never say never.
I would say it's very unlikely, but I never say never with Howie. But I would say very unlikely.
I would agree. Let's get to our commercial break. Appreciate everybody being here on the show today. We got a great crowd in here for a trade deadline edition. When we come back, we'll kick around a couple more trade deadline topics, and then we will talk about Jalen Hurts. Our man Jimmy Kemsky from PhillyVoice.com kind of logged Jalen's last 4 games, and I'm starting to see a trend here where Jalen and this offense are in a good spot, and they seem to be getting better and better, and that's a good sign for the Philadelphia Eagles and what they're able to do, what they might be able to do this year. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Before I get to our break, let me tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. I put the promo code on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, you can look at it. If you're listening on the podcast, the promo code is YouTube150. It gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposits, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa, and a big thanks to them for sponsoring Birds 365 today, the full 2-hour show. Let's get to our commercial break. We'll be right back in 3 minutes, everybody.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.